Today we are bringing all of the MMA news straight to you with timestamps, by the way, if you would like to skip to any particular part of the video. Hello everybody and welcome back to the video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to everything that you missed in MMA this week. This is where we go through all of the news, all the fight announcements, fights that are coming up this weekend, things that you would not typically hear about. Like we could be going into something like very, very small. For example, we have something like that could never happen with Sean O'Malley. You know what I mean? It's just some guy called him out that typically these news channels wouldn't report on. But I wanted to talk to him. But I wanted to talk about all this. But guys, there hasn't been a ton of MMA news this week. It's a little bit, we're lacking on the MMA news this week, but very interesting topics, by the way. But the fight announcements that came out this week, oh my God, I cannot wait to talk about all this, guys. Thank you so much for coming here. Timestamps are there if you'd like to skip to any particular part of the video. Let's get into it. So obviously the biggest piece of news to come out this week is Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. The aftermath of all of that. People have been talking about Francis Ngannou actually doing what he set out to do, proving the UFC wrong, making a good name for MMA. Francis Ngannou actually looked great against Tyson Fury. Most people think that he won the fight, but I didn't watch the fight myself actually because I happened to be on vacation. I just saw highlights from it, so I can't say whether or not I thought Francis Ngannou won the fight. I just saw highlights. The highlights really made Francis Ngannou look good, I can tell you that. So that's been an entire thing that people have been talking about all week. People have been talking about Francis Ngannou doing better than the UFC, encouraging other fighters to leave the UFC and pursue boxing, or if they want to make money elsewhere, they can. But a little bit of a flawed argument. Francis Ngannou did what he set out to do, and I commend him for that. But there is another piece of news that we will touch on that really branched off of this between Chael and Ariel Helwani that I cannot wait to talk about. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, though. But before, we have another little piece of news because I want to go in order what happened throughout the week, guys. Blood Diamond finally cut from the UFC. This is a long time coming. I don't have too much to say about that. He was a fun fighter bursting onto the scene, but of course we realized that he wasn't necessarily UFC level. He got into the UFC because of the relationships, it seems like, but unfortunately, he didn't end up doing well in the UFC. Moving on to the next piece of news, though, Derrick Lewis has been arrested this week. Thankfully, it does not affect the fight coming up this weekend because I saw that and I was like, oh boy, this fight's going to be canceled and then we're going to lose a main event. But then again, I like watching Bonfim, so I'd be okay with that being the main event. Regardless, it was a fun matchup, but Derrick Lewis was driving his car. I believe they said 160. It was like 150, 160, something along those lines. That was ridiculous, driving in a 50 zone, and that's absolutely insane. I don't know why people do that, man. I don't know why people do that. There's no excuse for it. No excuse for it. Like, I get going like a little bit over the speed limit. Maybe you're in a rush or something, but man, you're just being reckless and playing with people's lives at that point. So, as always, if you guys don't know, I don't like Derrick Lewis, and this doesn't necessarily make me change my mind on him. So, there you go. Now, something that I'm kind of excited for, kind of not, is Paul Felder. His return is official. He officially submitted his first test to USADA, which a lot of people are saying is weird, which I never really thought about it until I saw people posting about it, where USADA is going to be gone. It takes 6 months to be in USADA, but by the time that 6 months is up, USADA is going to be no more. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know how that's going to work. Whatever comes, maybe Paul Felder will only have to do a couple months after that. Regardless, Paul Felder is actually coming back. And the reason why I'm conflicted on this is because I am such a big fan of Paul Felder. I love him as an announcer. I love him as a fighter. I love him as a guy. I really, really love Paul Felder. Like, I'm a big fan of him, okay? I don't think he's going to do well on his comeback. He's coming back in one of the toughest divisions ever, coming off of such a long layoff. He's significantly older now. I don't think it's going to go well for him, man. And plus, everybody's been talking about him fighting Jim Miller at UFC 300. That is a dream fight. Both fighters retire at UFC 300. A big fight like that, two fan favorites. I don't want to see that happen because I don't know who I cheer for. Two guys that are my favorite fighters, but I actually, now that I'm saying it, I would have to cheer for Jim Miller. I would have to, because wins at UFC 100, UFC 200, man, to cap it off at UFC 300, well, now it's escaping me. Who did he fight at UFC 200? Regardless, he fought on 100, 200, 300. To get a win there and retire would be the fairy tale ending that Jim Miller deserves, man. But Paul Felder, I don't want to see him fight. I don't want to see him lose. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm cheering against Paul Felder, because Paul Felder I'm such a big fan of too. But I have to admit, I'm a bigger Jim Miller fan. Jim Miller is one of my favorite fighters of all time. So this whole Paul Felder coming back thing is a roller coaster of emotions for me. Now, guys, here's the Sean O'Malley thing I wanted to talk about. So Fabricio Andrade wants to fight Sean O'Malley in the UFC and have a cross-promotion fight between one championship and the UFC. Will this happen? Will Dana White allow this to happen? Absolutely not, but the thought of it's there. The thought of it's great. Like, could you imagine these two going at it? Andrade is such an amazing fighter. Like, if you guys don't know, if you follow the channel, One Championship is my favorite organization, and the killers over there, and Fabricio Andrade is one of those killers. To have a cross-promotional fight with Sean O'Malley, like, if there were to ever be a cross-promotional fight between the UFC and One Championship, it would be the greatest skill challenges between organizations in the history. It's the best thing it could possibly do. So, to who could win that fight? Like, Andrade is really good, man, but I might lean towards Sean O'Malley just because of the crisp striking that he has, and I would imagine the fight would remain on the feet for most of the time. It's an interesting thought, so if you guys follow One Championship at all, let me know what you think and how that matchup would go along. Now, here's the big piece of news this week, guys. The big piece of news. Chael Sonnen versus Ariel Helwani. They had a very long interview, and it's worth the watch if you guys want to go watch it. Plus, I enjoy the banter. I'm a big Chael Sonnen guy. I like Ariel Helwani's show myself. So, there's branching off from what Francis Ngannou happened, like right with Tyson Fury. Ariel Helwani, actually, in one clip, he's like, yeah, we won. It's like Ariel Helwani's like, it's so evident. It is so evident to everybody besides probably Francis Ngannou that Ariel Helwani is only cheering for Francis Ngannou because he wants Dana White to squirm a little bit. He wants somebody leaving the UFC to be successful. You know, that's all that he wants. And he's just literally using Francis Ngannou for clout now. And he's like, I cannot believe, like, I'm shocked that Francis Ngannou still pulled off what he did. But Ariel Helwani's like acting like he saw this coming the whole time, where in reality, he was willing to sit there and let Francis Ngannou destroy his career just because he wanted Dana White to lose one of his fighters, right? So Chael Sonnen and Ariel Helwani had a very long interview, and they started going back and forth about like whether or not Ngannou leaving was still the right decision to make. And honestly, I don't know about you guys. I'm on Team Chael. It seems to have the entire MMA community split completely. Everybody's been talking like Chael made some good points, Ariel made some good points. Like in that banter, both of them did make good points. But ultimately, I find myself agreeing with Chael. It would have been better to stick around in the UFC. And I can make a whole video talking about that entire situation, but like, it's just because Ariel's coming with like such bad faith arguments. You know what I mean? He's so fake. That's the problem. You know, there are legitimate Francis Ngannou fans out there, but Ariel Helwani just doesn't care, and he's like spearheading the Francis Ngannou movement. And Francis doesn't seem to see it, at least, right? So that's worth a listen. A lot of YouTubers are making reaction videos to it. I might join, to be honest with you. I'm more on Chael Sonnen's side, but there are good points because at the end of the day, Francis Ngannou proved everybody wrong, right? You could end the argument there. But then you get into the other stuff where it's like, well, that's like a 1 in a million chance. To encourage other fighters to do that is just crazy. So there's different points to talk about, but that is honestly worth a listen, and that is probably like the biggest thing to come out of this week, those two going at each other, and it was only yesterday. So yeah, you guys got to go check that out. It was really good. Oh, but guys, I want to talk about these fight announcements. All right, I'm going to fire through these fight announcements. All the fight announcements for this week. We have Cody Brundage taking on Zach Reese on December 2nd. Somehow Cody Brundage is still in the UFC. We have Tatsuro Taira taking on Carlos Hernandez on December 9th. Beneil Dariush versus Arman Sarukian on December 2nd. This is a fantastic fight. I cannot wait to see it. I'm a big fan of Beneil Dariush, and I love watching Arman Sarukian fight. His skill level is something to really witness. So I want to see some grappling exchanges between those two. I actually don't know who's going to win that fight, to be quite honest with you. I really don't. But then we have Bobby Green versus Dan Hooker, the co-main event on December 2nd, and it's a 5-round fight. We get Bobby Hooker versus... did I say Bobby Hooker? Bobby Green versus Dan Hooker. A co-main event, 5-round fight. Oh my god, that whole card is amazing. Continue on that card though. We have Ihor Potieria versus Rodolfo Bellato on December 2nd. Great fight again. We have Molly McCann, who is officially booked to fight at 115 pounds, but we don't have the opponent yet. We have Jekka Seri versus Lucas Alexander on November 18th. Butler pulled out of that fight. And finally, we have Johan Lioness taking on Sam Patterson on January 20th. Those are some amazing fights. Amazing. I cannot wait for the December 2nd card. Beneil Dariush, Arman Sarukian fighting. Bobby Green versus Dan Hooker. 5-round fight. Tatsuro Taira. Always love watching that guy fight too. Ihor Potieria is pretty fun too. Same with Bellato. Like, these fight announcements are amazing. Oh my god. Like, I understand that there hasn't been as many MMA cards in the last quarter of the year, but man, they are stacking these cards. I cannot wait. To watch, guys. And guys, before I get you out of here, I do want to talk about the fights to watch this weekend. There is One Championship and the UFC. One Championship is tonight. UFC is tomorrow. I'm going to be watching both cards. One Championship, I love their fight nights. Very happy they started doing the fight night cards so I can catch One Championship at night. My favorite organization. The card is stacked. You got to go check it out. I love watching Ruotolo fight, but especially. But guys, the UFC fight night is very stacked in itself. Thankfully, Derrick Lewis is still on the card, even though getting arrested. So there's a lot of competitive fights on the UFC card. So like for a fight night, it is a very strong card, in my opinion at least, but I'd love to know what you guys think down below afterwards. And with that being said though, guys, that is all I have for you today. That has been everything that you missed in MMA this week. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you are new here and you enjoy the content, please consider hitting the like button, help out the channel a ton, and subscribe if you are brand new. On the screen right now, you will have 2 videos from the Clenbat channel if you'd like to continue watching the channel. I will see you either there or in the next video, guys. Take care.